All right, welcome back. This is part 2 of Graphing the Market, Chapter 5, Packet 3. Back to squash. Yeah, last one we talked about how if prices above the X will be pushed down, if prices below the X will be pushed up. That's all fun and exciting, but let's talk about how supply or demand itself can shift. All right, you might recall this is part of the packet, which is on Google Classroom. And it looks like this. This is the 4-step process. It's on your packet. Take a look. Pause me and check. Otherwise, here we go. We start in equilibrium, just like we are here. Equilibrium. And then something happens. In other words, determine if it is a price change, which you don't have to worry about until part 3, I guess, of chapter 5. That'll be packet 4 next week. Or an actual change in supply and demand. We're going to go with supply and demand, and we're going to go through one of these 4 graphs here. Ignore these for now. That's the next part. And then we'll explain why supply or demand changed and a shortage. If you go back to the packet, you may recall I gave you an example. Here we go again. Squash. Everybody's happy. Price is at X. Things are cool. And then it happens. Dr. Fauci announces that if you eat squash, it'll prevent the virus. So, hey, wow, I don't want the virus, and if I eat squash, I won't get it. Then I can do whatever I want. I don't have to wear masks, I don't have to be socially distant and isolated. This will be great. What happens to the squash market if Fauci announces such a thing? That'd be funny. But let's say for grins and chuckles he does. Forget oxychloroquine. Forget those other drugs. You want squash. All right, so we want squash. He sounds like a mafia doctor, so let's do it. Everybody and their uncle will be jumping out here wanting squash. Is that a supply thing or a demand thing? Pause the tape, think about it, get an answer. Yep, it's a demand thing. More people are going to want squash at each and every price. That's code word for the entire freaking function. The whole thing is demand. People are going to want more squash. So the demand for squash is going to shift out to the right. In other words, we have a new demand curve, D2. It shifted. It bebopped over here. Well, you don't have to worry about graphing this, but understand what happens now. The price has not yet changed. Demand changed. And because demand changed, we now have effectively no longer QE. This isn't PE. This black demand curve really isn't here anymore. It's now red. In other words, this is the new X marks the spot. This is demand. This is supply. This one shifted over here. So at this old price, it's no longer PE, so shoot, why not? I'm just going to go, okay, it's not price anymore, it's just price. It's not E anymore, it's just price. So at that price, and again, you don't have to graph this, I'm just trying to show you what happens here. You would continue over, and now we discover, wow, that's pretty long. This is QD2. In other words, the new quantity demanded, it moved over here, it increased. This is no longer QE, it's just plain QS. Okay, remember last video? What do we call this if quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied? In other words, we have an unoverlapped, hanging out loose quantity demanded at this price. Shortage or surplus. Exactly, it's a shortage. Price is below X, so remember the forces of competition between demanders are going to push the price up to the new X. So what we end up with then is demanders outbid each other and they push the price up to this. Well, hang on, let me get rid of this garbage here because I don't want you to be confused. Just understand that the price lags. Demand shifted. At the old price, we end up with a temporary shortage. So we're going to get rid of that just to make it clean. And there it is. So back to my story. Price is bid up by demanders in a shortage, pushing the price up, which is opposite of what they would really want, to a PE2. There we go. Bada boom, bada bing. Speaking of Fauci. And we take that price and shoot back over, and we hit the supply curve and the demand curve at the X marks the spot. It's all magical and wonderful. And we get a new quantity of equilibrium, QE2. Pop. So look at what happened to my market for squash. People want to eat squash because it'll save you from the virus. Yay! So everybody and their uncle buys squash at whatever the price. And what ends up happening is we push the price of squash up and more people are buying it. And I bet you in this next growing season, people who can plant and grow crops are going to plant a lot of squash because of this higher price. But that's another story for later, like your homework. We aren't finished though. Let's see here. We did step 1. We figured out it's a change in demand right there. Demand shifted. In fact, it's this graph right here. Isn't this the one we just graphed? Well, yeah, of course it is. Bada boom, bada bing. Now we got to do step 4. Why did demand change? You may recall chapter 3, specifically those 7 things on pages 42 through 44, and 2 other YouTube videos that I have shared with you. So it's a temporary shortage because of an increase in demand. We know that the price will increase. Again, we're looking at this video, or this graph. So the price will increase, more people want to buy it. The only thing we have to do now is explain why. Which of those 7 shifters of demand was it? Yep, it's a change. This triangle means change in styles, tastes, preferences, habits. It's that thing that changes most often with demand. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a 100% graphing the market and a change. You may recall your homework asked you to take some of those scenarios. So here are those scenarios. The homework asked you to pick 4 of these. There are 21, but you pick 4 and do the 4-step process, which is what I just showed you in the video. So you can pick whatever it is, whatever ones you pick, just draw the big L, label it, and all that stuff. But be sure to put in the number of the one you're graphing next to each one. And don't forget to title it. For example, in number 14 here, what would the title of this graph right here be? Is it grains, fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides, wheat? Check it out. I tell you, the wheat market. So the title in this case would be wheat, and what would happen to the supply or the demand for wheat if this was happening. This is a lot like page 25 when you had to shift demand to the right, or page 25 where you had to shift demand to the left. This is a lot like that. So you pick 4 of these, graph it on a piece of paper, graph it on paint, I don't care, and send it along to me and I'll give you feedback. All right? So let's review. 4-step process. You start out with what you see here in black. Don't forget the title, everybody's happy. And then a scenario happens like these scenarios, that you saw here. And then you decide if it's a supply thing or demand thing, and will people want more or less, or will suppliers provide more or provide less at each and every price. You would shift it like you see here, and then there we go. It could also be a lot like, this other thing that we saw. Oh, where did I put that one? Don't tell me. There it is. So in other words, you're going to pick one of these 4 graphs here as one of your answers. Did demand increase or decrease? Did supply increase or decrease, etc.? You're going to graph it. And then you're going to pick one of those reasons. If you shift supply, pick one of the 3. If you shift demand, pick one of the 7. And just slap it on there. And we'll see how it goes. So that's it. Part 2, how to graph a market.